We all enjoy watching horror movies. The fear, the torture, the suspense, the excitement. We have to watch them to the end to see if the evildoers get what they deserve. We love this kind of excitement from time to time. It interrupts our boring daily routine. We watch movies that excite and terrify, that stir our emotions, spark our imagination, present what if situations. We imagine what we would do if faced with the same situation in real life. I never really thought that I would actually have to go through something like that, though. My name is Sola. I'm 14 years old. I live with my mom and my brother. My father left us long ago, and we don't know where he went or anything else about him. Mom lost hope and gave up trying to find him. She decided to raise us alone. My brother Carl and I were best friends. He trusted me with all his secrets. We didn't have any relatives, and very few people came to visit us. One day, Mom received a phone call, and as she was talking, her face changed. Suddenly, she seemed afraid. She saw me coming and tried to force a smile on her face, but I noticed, and I heard her say, "Yes, it's the same address. When did you leave the hospital?" "Sure, sure, I'll wait for you." I wondered why Mom was so nervous, and I asked her, "Who were you talking to?" She told me that she was talking to her brother, and I thought, "Brother? You never told us you had a brother." Then she explained that her brother had left a long time ago and had just returned. She told me that he was coming to visit us tomorrow. I didn't know why Mom would have kept her brother a secret from us, but I was still excited to meet my uncle. Carl was at summer camp, which meant that he was going to miss meeting Uncle. Too bad. The next day, Mom cleaned the house and told me not to speak too much with Uncle because he didn't like talkative people. When Uncle arrived, Mom and I welcomed him. He was handsome, with long, soft blonde hair and an amazing smile. He told Mom that I was so beautiful, but Mom seemed worried rather than pleased upon hearing this. Uncle was so funny, and I loved him. He told me a lot of stories about Italy and other places. After a short time, he had to leave. I didn't want him to go, but he insisted. He said that he would see me again soon. Mom seemed horrified. I looked at her and asked her what was wrong, but she didn't answer. She just held her right arm. I thought it was very strange. Even stranger still, later that night, after I had gone to bed, I was startled when Mom woke me in the middle of the night to warn me never to accept any invitation from Uncle, even if it was just to go for a walk together. I thought that was very odd and asked her why, but she said that she would explain everything later. Next day, she went to visit my brother and take him some stuff that he needed. Before she left, she looked at me for a second. Then she warned me not to go out alone. A while after she had left, the doorbell rang, and I opened it. Uncle was standing there. He asked where Mom was, and I told him she had gone out to do some errands. I asked him to come in, but he refused. As he was leaving, he hesitated and turned around and asked me if I would like to go to get some ice cream with him at a park. I recalled Mom's warning, but I thought to myself, he's my uncle. What's the worst that could happen? So I shrugged off Mom's warning and I went with him. I was glad I did because we had a great time, laughing and eating. He even told me some more stories. At some point during our talking, he looked up at the sky and said, "What beautiful birds." I looked up to see what he was looking at, when suddenly I felt something like a needle jab in my neck. Then all went out. I woke up to find myself in a deserted place against the wall with my hands tied over my head. Uncle was sitting on a chair with a strange collection of tools in front of him. His expression wasn't friendly at all, and he had a scary look on his face. I asked him where I was and what he was doing, but all he said was not to worry, that we were going to have some fun together. He then emphasized that the important thing for me to know was that screaming wasn't allowed. He asked me if I was ready for a simple test, but before I could reply, I felt a red-hot branding iron pressed against my leg. Contrary to his cautionary instructions, I screamed. In fact, I screamed a lot and very loudly. But instead of being angry, he just laughed and said that he loved to hear people scream. Then I lost consciousness from the pain. I woke up to a shocking splash of cold water. He told me that it was much too early to start fainting yet. Then he grabbed a cattle prod. He put it against my arm. I gasped and couldn't breathe due to the electric shock. I screamed some more, shouting between ragged breaths. Are you crazy? What do you want from me? He slapped me hard across the face and said, This is my revenge, and you're the unfortunate recipient of it. Then he slowly but gently dragged the sharp tip of the knife across my face, with a gleeful look on his face, and said, How would you like to have a nice, pretty scar? Then he stabbed my arm with his knife, and I screamed again, and again he laughed. He was ecstatic, and began jumping around like an excited monkey. I didn't know if it was day or night. All I knew was that every time I would pass out with pain, I would wake up to more torture, with a new tool for him to play with. How many days must I endure this madness, I thought. Despite my agony and suffering, I thought about Carl and Mom. Then, one day, he stood in front of me and began crying. He said that all of this was because of my mother. He told me that he had only been playing with Mom when he stabbed her in the arm, and that he had only meant to scare her a little, that she really shouldn't have summoned the police to have him arrested and committed to an asylum. He said he couldn't forgive her for that he can't trick or harm her again, so he decided to harm me instead. Then he smashed my knee with a hammer, and I lost consciousness again. When I woke up, he was gone. This was my chance to escape. But how? I tried pulling my hands out of the ropes. Though it chafed my skin painfully, I was able to free my hands. I was shocked to see how badly injured I was. I clumsily clambered up the ladder with my smashed kneecap, but found the door had a big lock on it. I retrieved his hammer and managed to smash open the lock. I found myself exiting an outside storm cellar that led up to a garden where an old car was parked. I hobbled out onto the nearby road and flagged the car. The driver stopped for me, and after seeing my desperate condition, he looked very concerned and asked me what had happened. I eased myself into his car and told him just to drive anywhere away from here. Then I would tell him everything. It was nighttime when he delivered me to my home. I knocked on the door, and Carl opened it. When he saw what a bleeding, tortured mess I was, he screamed and began wailing. He hugged me while I called for Mom. She woke up, came to me, saw my condition, and began crying profusely while hugging me tightly. I told them everything that had happened and apologized to Mom for not heeding her advice. I asked them how many days I'd been gone, and I was shocked to know that my horrific ordeal had lasted 90 days. We called the police, and I took them to the cellar I was held prisoner in, but Uncle was long gone. Now I know Mom's secret, why she was afraid when he called, why she held her arm in Uncle's presence, why she warned me not to go anywhere with him. If only she had told me why, things might have been different. I have lived in fear of everything since that day. Recently, I received a letter. It only made matters worse. It said, This isn't over yet, until we meet again. Mom and I had the sick feeling that he was still watching us, waiting for an opportunity to take his revenge. So we moved to a city far away to start a new anonymous life, to try and put this horrible experience behind us forever, even if it did haunt our every waking hour. One of the best feelings in the world for any woman is being a mother, to have someone love you for who you are, for just being you, and expect nothing in return. You're the heroine of their story. You become everything they ever dreamed, and you'd give anything to see a smile on their face. I'm proud to say that I'm a mother to 50 kids. I know, that's a lot, but let me tell you the story. I'm Susan, 20 years old. I come from a very rich family. My dad's Stefan Heiss, a very famous businessman. Yes, the owner of Heiss Cars Industry. My mom's Elena. She comes from a very rich family in Sweden. She married my dad and they built their life from scratch. I loved kids, ever since I was a kid. Sometimes I feel like they're walking cotton candy. Their laughs, their mischief. All the kids in our family loved me, and I loved them. Even my aunt said that I'd make a great mother someday. So did Henry. Henry was my childhood friend. We grew up together. We had the same interests, same hobbies. We even thought alike. We got married and started our life together. We were young, but our dreams were big. I was thrilled when I found out that I was pregnant, and Henry was so happy he couldn't believe it. He did everything he could to help me relax. He couldn't wait to be a father, but destiny had something else in store for us. We had just arrived from Sweden. Henry had a problem at work, He was talking on the phone while driving at high speed on a dangerous road. I tried to tell him to watch the road, but it was too late. A truck came out of nowhere and pushed our car off the side. We fell into the lake, and we were unconscious. When I woke up, I found my mother and Henry's mother both looking at me, trying their best not to cry, and I soon found out why. In order to save my life, they put me through an operation. Not only have I lost my child, but I won't be able to have one ever again. Henry was also bruised, but my wounds ran way deeper. That was it, and I could never forgive him. If it weren't for him, none of this would have happened, I thought. None of it. I got a divorce later, after Henry tried over and over and over to fix the situation, to apologize, to ask for a second chance. But all I saw were empty words. There was no second chance. I tried to keep myself busy, find a way to invest my money and time, trying to get my mind off the accident. I decided to open up a toy store. I wanted to bring joy to all the children. One day, as I was standing in my store, I glimpsed a small boy standing out front, looking at a toy. The boy was alone, about 8 years old, but that wasn't all. His clothes were patched up and looked more like rags. His face and hands were dirty, and he just stood there, looking at the doll, daydreaming. I found myself walking out to him, but when he saw me coming, he ran away. A few days passed, and that boy's gaze was all I thought of. Then, one day, I found him outside the store again, looking at a different toy. I moved towards him slowly this time, till I was right beside him. Then I said, "Do you like it?" The boy freaked out and tried to run again, but I caught his arm this time and said, "Don't be afraid. I'm Susan." The boy looked at me, terrified, and I smiled. He started to relax. He told me his name was Billy, and that he was 7, and that he lives nearby. When I asked him about his parents, he said he never knew them, that he lived with Uncle Max. I asked him who Uncle Max was, but he cast his eyes down and was nervous all of a sudden. He looked a bit scared. I got curious, so I took him home with me, let him shower, and prepared a hot meal. I told him that I'd take him home after he'd eaten. I asked him about where he lived. He was quiet for a second. Then he said he had to go, that his brothers and sisters were waiting for him. I asked him how many he had. "Around 50, he said. I was shocked. He told me that they all lived in a big room with Uncle Max. "But how is this Uncle Max able to look after you all?" I asked curiously. But he got nervous again, and he insisted that he must leave, so I decided to take him there. Maybe it'll help clear some of the mystery, I thought. I drove, and Billy was guiding the way, until we got there. The place was a bit far from all the other houses. It looked more like a dump, with some sort of shack built on it. A man was standing in front of the door, holding a kid by the arm and beating him senseless. The boy was younger than Billy, and Billy was shaking next to me, mumbling to himself, "He's gonna hit me too. I'm so late." Then he turned to me and said, "Bye, Susan. You have to leave now, quickly." And then he ran towards the shack. I backed up the car and stood nearby to see what happens. The man hit him hard across the face, and I heard him say, "Where's the money you stole today, boy?" Billy turned out his empty pockets, and the man dragged him inside by the collar. I wanted to help, so I decided to call Henry, who was more than happy to answer my call. I told him what had happened, and he came to me. We approached the shack together slowly and looked through the window. A lot of children, ages from 3 to 7. The place was a real dump. The man was sitting at a table. It had food and drink. Billy was dragging a heavy sack on the floor, and another kid was carrying a cup to bring to the man, who snatched it out of the boy's hand. Then he got up and started waking the rest of the kids, telling them to get out there and bring him money, that they would face a real nightmare if they didn't. I wanted to barge in, but Henry stopped me. He called the police instead. The police came quickly, and they caught the man. Apparently, he kidnapped these children from parks and surrounding areas, so they could steal for him, and he would starve them and beat them. The police didn't know what to do with all the children, and I felt like this was my second chance. I told the police that I would build a home big enough, and I would take them all in, to give them the care and love that they deserve. And that is how I became a mother to 50 kids.